Which tight ends should you be buying and selling from the AFC North? We'll tell you next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also check me out over on the Locked On Cowboys podcast. And today, as always, I'm being joined by Michael Fabiano. You can follow him on Twitter at Michael_Fabiano. You can also check out all of his great work over on SI. And on today's show, we're continuing our training camp previews by looking at the AFC North. And we're going to tell you the players that we want to buy, sell, and some sleepers to watch. But I got to say, this is one of the divisions that feels pretty settled. Like, for the most part, we know which dynasty assets are going to be valuable. There's just not a lot of movement here.
Yeah, and I agree. When I look through the teams in terms of our buy, really the player that stood out to me was Isaiah Likely, because we've seen flashes. We've never seen him put together a huge season because he's been playing behind Mark Andrews, but he's entering a contract year. He's 25. He's had 11 combined touchdowns in the last 2 years. But he's never averaged more than 3.8 targets per game in his career. Looking at the last season's numbers, the top 12 tight ends, no one averaged fewer than 4.1, and 8 of those tight ends average at least 5.2. So Isaiah Likely simply is not getting enough opportunities to be a fantasy asset. The good news is that last year he averaged nearly 2.9 points per touch. And you got to look at that data too, which shows you, when the guy gets the football, does he make plays? That average is better than every tight end in the top 12 last year, besides George Kittle, Mark Andrews, Laporta, and Tucker Kraft. And again, he's going into the final year of his rookie contract, but so is Mark Andrews going into the last year of his deal. So if you're the Ravens, are you going to pay Mark Andrews, who'll be 30 in September, who obviously has contributed a whole hell of a lot to your team, although, the most recent memory of Mark Andrews is not really a great one if you're a Ravens fan. Mm-hmm. But are you going to pay Likely at 25, or are you going to pay Andrews at 30? And if there's a world, Marcus, where they bring them both back, which I don't know that would be the case, but if there's a world where they bring them both, I could see Likely being more of the tight end one than Andrews. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. Isaiah Likely will be, singing for his supper as you would, because he's got to put up really good numbers in order to get that contract. And it'll probably be his best chance to have a very good contract. Now, whether or not the Ravens decide to franchise him or not, I mean, that's neither here nor there. That's a long time into the future. But Isaiah Likely's got a lot of talent. He has proven it in the past. He just needs the opportunity. And starting in 2026, Marcus, I think he could have the opportunity, whether it's in Baltimore or maybe someplace else.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure we're going to have to wait that long. We've already heard Harbaugh talk about how he thinks Isaiah Likely has all-pro potential, and that's what he's challenging him to be this year. I just thought last year, Mark Andrews started the year slow and got better as the season went on.
Terrible.
Yes, and then the playoff game was rough against Buffalo. There's no doubt. But I thought when Isaiah Likely was on the field and given opportunities, the offense just looked faster and more dynamic. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see the Ravens really scale back Mark Andrews' usage, and maybe he become not a part-time player, because he's always going to be on the field, but maybe he's not getting as much work in the middle of the field. And maybe he's more of a red zone option than a full-time player, because I do think Isaiah Likely is a superstar is a strong word, but I think he could be that. So I'm with you. Plus, the price is still very attainable. Tight end 14 right now. He's going behind guys like Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts. We like Evan Ingram maybe a little bit more than the consensus, but if I'm choosing between Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in my dynasty league, I'd rather have Isaiah Likely, and he's being drafted about 50 spots after Mark Andrews right now.
That's a no-brainer because of youth and upside. Mark Andrews, and listen, folks, Mark Andrews scored 11 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
Touchdown regression is coming. That monster is going to eat away maybe half of those touchdowns. If he has 6 or 7 this year coming up, you're going to be singing in the streets. But it is not a scenario where Andrews is going to remain a prominent player in the Ravens offense or somewhere else long term. And remember what Marcus and I talk about when those tight ends get to like 32, 33, like, unless you're Tony Gonzalez or Travis Kelce or Antonio Gates, like the end is coming statistically.
Yeah.
So you want to get out of that in terms of a Mark Andrews, and you want to get into an Isaiah Likely who's young and has plenty of time to be, as Harbaugh had said, maybe that all pro type of tight end here in the next few years.
And there's just no chance that they bring back both of these tight ends in 2026 with their contracts both expiring. I think the Ravens, I think they're a smart organization. I think they're going to choose Likely because he's just way more likely to perform better on the next contract. That's a total dad joke. To perform better on the next contract than Mark Andrews. So buy Isaiah Likely now because the price isn't going to get any cheaper, because every day that goes by, Fabs, we're just closer and closer to Isaiah Likely being the standalone tight end 1 in Baltimore. So go buy him now before it gets even more expensive. I wanted to mention a tight end that I'm buying from this division, and that's Mike Gesicki, who had the 10th most yards last year from a tight end. He's in an incredible offense. There's no other tight ends on the roster that are going to challenge him for snaps and targets. And yet, he's tight end 28 right now on Dynasty League football. He also signed an extension this offseason, keeping him in Cincinnati for the next few years. And I understand it's not a super exciting option, but if you don't have one of those top, let's say 5 or 6 tight ends, right? You missed out on Bryars, McBride, Loveland, Hawkinson. I think Gesicki is a really nice, cheap option that can have some usable fantasy weeks for you.
Gesicki's career has kind of been funny, right? Because remember that one year in Miami where he had, 70 catches, over 700 yards, and it looked like he was an ascending player. And then, Mike McDaniels and the tight end's not getting used. And then strangely it did with Jonnu Smith last year, but we're going to talk about him in a second. Yep. Gesicki had, a couple of nondescript years. He kind of started to look like maybe a journeyman, but I mean, Cincinnati's a good spot for him. Yeah. He had a good, not great year last year. He's got a very good quarterback, an excellent quarterback. He's in an offense that's going to score a lot of points. As Marcus will always point out, their defense is going to suck eggs. So they're going to have to score points. So yeah, Gesicki's in a good spot. Again, not a guy who's ever going to be an elite type of player, but the value's there based on his ADP.
No, and we talked about Mason Taylor on Monday's show, a player that we're buying from the AFC East. I think like Gesicki is a perfect player to pair with Mason Taylor, because maybe it's going to take Taylor a month or two to be the full-time tight end and get those targets. But I think Gesicki can be a great guy to fill in early in the season. He's going to be on the field in passing situations. He can give you startable weeks, and he costs you nothing. In fact, he might even be free in your dynasty leagues right now. Just think Gesicki's in a really good situation. He's not on the field to block. He's on the field to be a pass catcher. And with so much attention going to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, maybe we see a positive regression with touchdowns, right? Instead of 2, maybe he gets to 7. If he gets to 7, now we're talking about somebody who is a potential top 10 fantasy tight end.
Yeah, I'm on board with Gesicki with the expectation that, you're not going to get a guy who's going to be over the top elite, but could be, a solid player for you, especially if you're, looking for a matchup based option throughout the course of the seasons.
And another one, I love Terrence Ferguson from the Rams. I'm sure we'll get to him in the upcoming weeks. He's another one. I want to pair Gesicki with Terrence Ferguson because Ferguson might have to split snaps with Tyler Higbee to start the year. I can use Gesicki until he's ready. So right now, go buy Mike Gesicki while he's so cheap before we get to training camp. All right, let's talk about some players that we are selling from the AFC North, including, shocking, another tight end. We'll get to Jonnu Smith next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for the show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories and enjoying the show rather than dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. But that's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes concert tickets faster and easier to get than ever before, and prices actually drop as we get closer to showtime. And you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. One of my favorite features in the Gametime app is the panoramic seat view, so you'll know exactly what your seats look like in the app before you buy. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are previewing the AFC North going into training camps. And let's talk about some players that we are selling from this division. Who do you got?
So this was a tough exercise because, like, think about the teams, right? Cincinnati, I mean, who are you going to sell off of that roster? Nobody.
Nobody.
I mean, unless you don't believe in Chase Brown, I do.
I do.
Cleveland, nobody has, like, I mean, maybe Jerry Jeudy, right? Or Njoku, but
I mean, Judy's like wide receiver 40 right now in Dynasty leagues.
Right. And then, you look at the roster for, Pittsburgh, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I'm not selling DK. I'm not selling either one of the running backs. I guess the tight ends, because Jonnu Smith is there now. I mean, Baltimore, who are you going to sell? Are you going to sell Derrick Henry? You're going to sell DeAndre Hopkins for what?
Nothing.
Like a ham sandwich? Yeah. I don't know. Like, you're not going to get much. So I went with Jonnu here because he's coming off of a sensational season where he was a tight end 4. He's going to be 30 in August. And so, Freiermuth is younger. And I have said this before. I don't think that Smith going to Pittsburgh is a death blow. Okay. It's not a situation where he's just suddenly not going to be useful in fantasy, but he's not going to be a top 5 tight end. He's not going to be a top 10 tight end. And I don't know if he's going to be a top 12 tight end, but it doesn't mean that he can't be a matchup based starter or somebody that's going to put up some good numbers. Certainly not on a consistent basis, but at times, because Arthur Smith knows how to utilize him. And I've also pointed out that Jonnu Smith ran more routes on the perimeter than any tight end in the National Football League last season. So he's kind of like a wide receiver in a tight end's body. With that being said, I think you can still sell him and get something for him. Coming off a big year, selling the fact that he's versatile, that he's going to be able to be utilized. I mean, Pittsburgh's second wide receiver, is Robert Woods, right now. I mean, they just don't have a lot. So there is a world where Jonnu Smith could be the number 2 target in the passing game for Aaron Rodgers. It's 100% a possibility. And you want to sell on that kind of stuff as a fantasy manager. I just don't know that Jonnu Smith's long-term, projection is ever going to be what it was at the end of last season, where we saw him as a top 8 tight end before he got traded to Pittsburgh. So this is a good time to trade him. It probably was a better time to trade him before he was traded to Pittsburgh, to be quite honest with you. But this division, Marcus, was just really hard for me to pin down that one guy that I really want to sell before the season starts. There's just not a lot of those types of players in this division. Again, unless you're like, well, I'm selling Derrick Henry because, he's going to be 31, or, I want to sell Lamar Jackson before the wheels fall off, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. Nope. So Smith was my begrudgingly, projected pick here as a sell.
Do you know who the most productive tight end has been with Aaron Rodgers throughout his career?
So I'm going to say Jermichael Finley.
You're right. Jermichael Finley in 2011 had 765 yards with Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. Jonnu Smith is not Jermichael Finley at this stage of his career. He's a good tight end, right? And Aaron Rodgers is not 2011 Aaron Rodgers anymore, right? So I also think Pat Freiermuth is just going to be on the field a bunch. Like I'm not convinced that Jonnu Smith is going to be the tight end 1 in Pittsburgh, because they gave Pat Freiermuth a pretty big deal last offseason. Mike Tomlin loves Pat Freiermuth. They love what he can do as a blocker. He's going to be on the field, right? Jonnu Smith will get his targets. I've got no doubt about that. this offense is just not all that exciting. And I know that there's an opportunity here for Jonnu Smith to get targets, but I'm kind of out. Plus, we should also mention he's in the last year of his deal. He'll be a free agent in 2026. Aaron Rodgers says he's going to retire after this year. I'm sure Arthur Smith would love to bring him back, but that's probably going to be with a rookie quarterback next year. It's a bad situation all around. We should also mention they drafted Darnell Washington in the 3rd round 2 years ago. He's going to be on the field as a blocker. This just has all the makings of a dynasty disaster. I want no part of Jonnu Smith this year.
Yeah, we joked about, if Arthur Smith could run a personnel of 5 tight ends, he may decide to do that. And I mean, not for nothing. Think about it. Fryenwood's a tight end. Jonnu's a tight end. Darnell Washington's a tight end. DK Metcalf is built like a brick S house, Yep. He's got that build too. So, I mean, the Steelers are going to have some of the biggest, strongest wide receivers, that's for sure, and tight ends amongst that group. But yeah, I mean, everything that you said is true. And again, we talk about, you got to look at age, 30 years old. How many more good years is he going to have coming off of the best year of his career? Magical season, dare I say. It's never going to, Jonnu Smith is never going to be a top 5 tight end in fantasy again. But you have to sell the fact that he's going to be utilized in the offense because the Steelers don't have much, but long-term, not only just Jonnu Smith, every member of the Steelers. I don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. And if they do go to a rookie, as Marcus alluded to, potentially in 2026, what the hell does that look like? So, and the Steelers didn't bring in Aaron Rodgers to lose games. They want to win. So my guess is they're not going to have a super high draft pick where they're going to be able to get, one of these high-end quarterbacks in the draft in 2026. That's neither here nor there. Jonnu Smith is a sell.
My sell for the AFC North is Joe Burrow. And I love Joe Burrow. He was probably my favorite quarterback.
My God, wait a minute, Marcus. What? Are you okay?
So here's the reason why.
Right now, are you sick?
No. Here's the reason why.
Wow.
I just think this is the highest Joe Burrow's value is ever going to be. He's quarterback 5 right now in startup drafts over on Dynasty League football behind Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts. If you look at Superflex startup drafts, he's the 5th overall pick. Jalen Hurts is 1 spot behind him. And if you look at startup ADP, the overall ADP is almost identical. It's just that Burrow is 28. He's had a significant injury history, and he doesn't give you a lot of rushing production. I just, at this point, with his value being as high as it's ever going to be, I think I would try to cash that in for, let me give you an example. Right now, you can get Joe Burrow. You can trade Joe Burrow for Patrick Mahomes and a 1st-round pick. That's a recent trade that's happened on Dynasty League football. You can trade Joe Burrow for Drake May in a 1st-round pick. That's another trade that's happened over on Dynasty League football. Joe Burrow's offensive line terrifies me. His injury history is pretty significant. I think I would just rather cash in now while he's healthy for somebody that's younger and something else. It has nothing to do with Burrow, the player. His fantasy numbers are going to be great whenever he's healthy. I just think I'd like to get out right now.
I mean, I understand the mindset if you're looking to cash in and thinking, and another season with 40+ touchdowns is probably not in the cards.
Well, even if it is, let's say he's at 4,800 passing yards and 40 touchdowns. Is his value going to go up in dynasty leagues? Because he's not going to pass Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. He's not going to pass Jaden Daniels because of the age. I just don't see how he improves on that spot.
No, I get it. I mean, you are playing the ultimate sell high game. That's what you're doing. And if you decide to do that and you have another quarterback on your roster that you feel good about, or, thinking about, I just don't like Patrick Mahomes. I'm just not a fan, from a fantasy standpoint over the last few years, but you're getting an additional 1st-round pick. So I understand the draw to that. It would just be really hard for me to trade away a guy in the prime of his career with the 2 wide receivers he has who are locked in, and an offense that's going to have to throw the football a lot. The concern with the offensive line and the injuries certainly warranted. There's no question about that. So depends on how much of a riverboat gambler you are, my friend. And obviously Marcus Mosher is a riverboat gambler, man. Can
I give you some other trades just that have happened with Joe Burrow over the last couple of weeks, just to kind of show you where his value is at? So how about Joe Burrow for CJ Stroud, the 107 this year, and a 2026 first round pick.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of draft capital and, a young quarterback coming back at you. So yeah.
Okay.
But I wonder, Marcus, I mean, are those pie in the sky sort of, outlier kind of trades that most people, wouldn't
Okay.
be
Let me give you a
making?
different one. This is this is a super flex league. Joe Burrow for my guy Michael Penix and CeeDee Lamb.
Woo! Yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for us to pass up on getting a Cowboy.
Yeah, but so that's my point, is that you can trade Burrow for a lot right now. And if you're just a little bit nervous about the injury stuff or the offensive line or the offense taking a little bit of a step back, I don't think now is a bad time to at least throw out some offers and see what you might get. And yeah, those offers that we mentioned, those might be pie in the sky, trade offers, but somebody in your league is going to want Joe Burrow. I would poke around to see what you can get him for or what you can trade him for.
If you're not trading, you're not trying. So, I mean, literally, like almost every player on every dynasty roster, what would Ted DiBiase say? Everyone's got a price for the $1 million man. Back to my WWE nerdiness. There is a price for every single player in a dynasty league. It's just whether or not somebody's willing to pay it.
All right, let's talk about some sleepers in the AFC North that we are targeting. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Make sure you check out the NFL Top 100 that will be releasing on Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. Eastern on Locked On Sports Today. The NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL host of Locked On, and there are some real stunners in the group. Don't miss where your favorite players were ranked, and subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about some sleepers in the AFC North. Again, this is a tough exercise because everything is so defined in this division, but who do you got?
Dude, I'm going with Shedeur Sanders. I don't understand how a guy could go from first round lock, top 10 lock to like 5th round pick and literally like struggling to potentially make the roster. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, listen, Mel Kiper, is praying this guy takes the starting job at some point. But listen, folks, he's 23. He was a starting quarterback for the Colorado Buffaloes, played under his old man the last couple of years. Last year, he was 3rd in FBS in passing yards. He was 2nd in touchdown passes behind only Cam Ward. He was the 9th best quarterback based on PFF data. He was the most accurate passer in FBS last year among quarterbacks with at least 300 dropbacks, completing 73.6% of his passes. He was 1st in adjusted completion percentage. He was 9th at the position in big time throws. Now, listen, I get he's not a mobile guy, and he's not going to run with the football. But you're telling me that this guy, who almost everyone a month or two before the draft was saying he could end up being in the top 5, has gone from that to a complete, and I'm not going to swear, but I mean, a bum like in a few months. Like, who are the Browns quarterbacks? Joe Flacco is 40 years old. He's going to be on the team for a year. Kenny Pickett is in a contract year. They're not going to sign him. I don't even know if he's going to make this year's roster.
That's very true.
And then, and I get it. Dylan Gabriel, they drafted in the 3rd round, so they like Dylan Gabriel more. And so maybe Dylan Gabriel should be my guy here, as a sleeper out of this Browns quarterback situation. But holy cow, what in the world happened to Shedeur Sanders that turned him from being one of the elite prospects in college at the quarterback position to being drafted behind Dylan Gabriel and a 5th rounder? I don't understand. Listen, I will not tell you that I am an expert at college football. Okay. I'm neck deep in the NFL, but everything I read about him leading into the draft was positive on the field. Now, some of the off-field stuff, I get it. Maybe teams just didn't want to deal with the Dion effect. I don't know. But you're telling me on a Browns team that's got these quarterbacks, and listen, I love Joe Flacco, but he's an old man, right? Kenny Pickett is he's a bust. Dylan Gabriel, I got to be honest with you. I mean, until I started doing research for the draft, I never heard of the kid. Okay, because again, I don't follow a lot of college football. You're telling me that Shedeur Sanders is that bad? And basically, he's free I mean, his ADP is weak as hell. So I would 100% take a shot on him and see what happens. Because as early as 2026, that's next year, there's a scenario in a world where he is competing for the starting job for the Cleveland Browns in a Kevin Stefanski offense. It's crazy. I still don't get it, Marcus. Maybe you can explain it to me. I have no idea what happened.
So I think I don't disagree that Shedeur is the kind of the sleeper that I want to target here. I think if you're best case scenario, you want Joe Flacco, I think, to start the season.
Yes.
You want the Browns to move on from Kenny Pickett and just give Shedeur a month or two to learn the offense, get up to speed of the NFL. Because I think if they throw him right out there, I don't know if you've looked at the Browns schedule, but it's unbelievably tough the first 2 months of the year. Give him some chance to kind of settle in and then maybe play the second half of the year. I think that's how you set him up for success. I think the only thing is when you're a 5th round pick, you're not guaranteed to make the roster. And if he's getting in trouble, like, again, speeding tickets aren't a big deal, but you start to add these things up over time and maybe it becomes too much noise for the Browns to worry about. I do think he's the most talented quarterback on the roster. But I think my only concern is even if he starts, I think we're looking at him in the, what do you think? Like the Bryce Young, Tua type of quarterback, like these pocket passers, they're going to have to win with insane volume. And that's the only thing that has me concerned is he's not really a runner. He's going to have to be a pocket passer that puts up big numbers. And those kind of guys are just easy to find in dynasty leagues.
And the thing though, too, is that, I mean, the price is right. If you decide that you're going to go out and take a shot on Shedeur Sanders and he stinks and he never okay, well, good. You throw him back into the waiver wire pool. I mean, it's a low risk, potentially high reward move. And you're telling me this kid's not motivated? I mean, listen, if going from being a top 10 pick to getting picked in the 5th round ain't enough to motivate you, after, 2 knuckleheads, the kids from the Atlanta coordinator, prank called him and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, it became kind of a joke. Yeah. And so now you're telling me he ain't going to be motivated. His old man is going to be motivating him as well. So again, I mean, I'm not saying that he's going to turn into anything like great, but just the talent is there to be a good pocket passer in the NFL who can throw the ball downfield. He was obviously very accurate in college. I will say this, and I've talked to Marcus about this before on the pod. Listen, the Browns drafting quarterbacks not really gone very well historically. Okay, like the guy that would have been the best one is Baker, and they got rid of him. Okay, and maybe Brian Sipe. I mean, whatever. But I mean, the bottom line here is that if you don't know who Brian Sipe is, go back and look. Number 17. Back in the day where the Browns were the glorious. Now they wear them again, the orange pants and I love those looks. Yeah. They're great. But they haven't historically been great drafting quarterbacks, but I mean, again, it's like the talent's there. I don't know what's going on otherwise. He's basically free. Throw a dart.
One guy I want to mention real quick before we head out, Keaton Mitchell, who I actually mentioned on last week's show, career yards per carry of 6.9, fully healthy now going into year 3. He's only 23. And I do think there's a world in which he could be the top backup for Derrick Henry. I think Justice Hill has kind of got that receiving role on lock, right? But Mitchell could be the guy that's rotating in, getting some more touches. And maybe the idea is to keep Derrick Henry a little bit fresher for the playoffs, bring that workload down a little bit. And now we see Mitchell getting not a ton of carries, but like 7, 8, 9 carries a game. That's pretty optimistic, but in that range. And he's just so efficient that you can't keep off the field. And if anything were to happen with Derrick Henry, if he sprains his big toe and misses a game, Keaton Mitchell is suddenly on our radar, and he is incredibly cheap right now. In fact, he might even be free and available on your waiver wire. So I like Keaton Mitchell quite a bit. He's somebody that I want to stash at the bottom of my roster.
I mean, he goes into the category of deep sleeper for me. I mean, my OCD, man, I'm always looking, sleeper, deep sleeper. I mean, he, like you said, he's basically free. The Ravens have always had success on the ground. God forbid anything happens to Derrick Henry. God forbid. Keaton Mitchell's going to be a part of the offense.
Do you want to guess where he's being drafted right now?
I mean, it's got to be in the 200s someplace.
RB 76, 240th overall.
Yeah. He's free.
That counts as a deep sleeper.
I mean, he's not even in the dollar store. The dollar store said, just take it.
Yeah, take it. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On Wednesday's show, Matt Williamson will be here to answer your Twitter questions. So make sure you send them into us at Marcus_Mosher, at Michael_Fabiano. Make sure you're downloading the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms, and we will see you right back here on Wednesday.